Since then, the Israeli Defense Forces have been sniping at any bird that dares cross into the Promised Land without Israeli authorization. Right? The IDF is like, where are your papers, bird? Huh? This is an insurgent bird. Clip its wings and send it to hell. Was that? We're Jewish and we don't believe in the concept of hell? Well, damn it. Fine, clip its wings and, I don't know, set it on fire or something. We have to defend ourselves from these terrorist birds. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Forkful of Noodles. I'm your host, Krish Mohan. Hey, you guys might notice that you hear a little bit of laughter in the background of these videos, of the Forkful of Noodles videos, and that's because these videos were recorded in front of a live virtual audience. That's right, I perform these shows over Zoom in front of a virtual audience that laughs and participates through the show, and it's a really fun time. And if you want to be a part of that show, you totally can. You can go to my website, krishmohanhaha.com, and snag tickets for these shows. I do them once a month on the last Friday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern, at 5 p.m. Pacific. They're $10, but if $10 is a little bit too much, if you're struggling financially and you still want to come check out this show, that's not a problem. Reach out to me, send me an email, DM me on Twitter, send me a message on Facebook, various different ways you can communicate with me. Let me know that you want to check out the show and you've hit some financial hard times, and I will get you a free code for the show so you can come, hang out, enjoy a comedy show that addresses issues that you won't hear on corporate mainstream media, and be around some like-minded, wonderful people. So again, if you go to my website, krishmohanhaha.com, you can snag your tickets and join the live virtual comedy shows that happen every single month. Thank you guys so much, and enjoy this. So anytime someone brings up either Israel or Palestine, you hear a very rare sound. It's the sound of everybody's assholes simultaneously shutting closed in pure discomfort. Then, likely, you'll get an explanation of how it's such a complicated issue, and commenting on it would do both sides a disservice, right? And that's really code for, please stop talking to me about this. I actually don't have any beliefs, and I just parrot whatever I hear on CNN as a gospel and base most of my personality on Anderson Cooper segments. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but you get the idea. You get the gist of it. So just to kind of uncomplicate things here, I'm going to take a crack at it, right? What could go wrong if a weird fringe socialist comedian tries to uncomplicate the Israel-Palestine situation? Wait, is it uncomplicate or decomplicate? Let's just go with unfuck. I'm very good at unfucking things. Now, in order to understand what the fuck is going on with Israel and Palestine, we have to take a trip back to the early 1900s when the Ottoman Empire was a thing. And that's not just like a discount store where you can get 4 futons for the price of 2 and your dignity. It was like an actual country, and as the name suggests, like an empire of sorts. Now, before World War I, the Ottoman Empire was home to various different ethnicities and religions. Though it was dominantly Muslim, there were also Jews and Christians as well. After World War II, or World War I, the wrongfully named War to End All Wars, the British decided to split up the empire. The region known as Palestine was under British control. Now, is it really a surprise that the British are at the start of this clusterfuck? I mean, most things in history are the British's fault, right? Like, I think that they are, right? Most things, from Palestine to Kashmir to Africa to my dad not hugging me, it's all the British's fault. What's really a shame about the British is that they never picked up the culinary skills or the dental hygiene of the nations they stole from and colonized. Perhaps that was part of the global revolt against imperialism, right? No food or dental secrets. Now, around this time after World War I, the Zionism movement had taken popularity. And if you're not sure what the Zionism movement is, it is...
which aimed to create a Jewish state in the region, the ancient homeland of the Jews. This was something that the British leaders had shown support for.
Now, they supported the movement, but they never made any claims to create a solely Jewish or Arabic state. And each time the subject was brought up, you'd hear that same sound of all of the assholes in the room collectively closing shut. It was fun. Now, when Zionists started purchasing land in Palestine, it led to the displacement of Palestinian farmers who had lived on that land for centuries. Ooh, did the wrong thing there. The Arabs revolted against the Jews who were, the British were approving these land grabs, so the Arabs revolted against the British, and with the help of Jewish militias, they were able to quell the Arab uprising. Now, in the 30s, the British started restricting Jewish migration and land purchases, right? It's kind of cute that the Zionists thought that the British were going to help create a holy land when really they wanted to create their own empire where they get to be the landlords of the globes. The Jews led a bunch of insurgencies, but all that came to a halt because of the Nazis, who were not just trying to be global landlords, but also cleanse the planet of anybody that wasn't blonde-haired or blue-eyed. You know, like Jesus was. Well, fictional Jesus. You know, real Jesus would kind of look like me, but like probably like more buff, you know, a little bit more buff. He was a carpenter. I work out sometimes. During these Jewish insurgencies, the now city of Sderot was a Palestinian village called Hajj. It was recorded that Jews and Muslims got along pretty swimmingly in this village, and the Muslims even protected Jewish paramilitary troops during British occupation, the same paramilitary troops that would end up eradicating all the Muslims just a few years later. Now, after World War II, the United Kingdom turned the future of Palestine over to the United Nations. Right? How generous of them to wash their hands of the mess that they created. You know, this is like going to a friend's birthday party at their house, and then you trash the place, and right before you leave, you say, hey, boy, somebody should really clean this place up. Okay, you guys are slobs. All right, peace. Then you leave. Now, the UN decided to split the region into two, and Jerusalem would become an international territory. Despite the Arabs having a clear demographic dominance, the Jews wound up with over half the land in the area. In 1948, Israel declares itself a state and claims the land for the Jewish people. Basically, the Arabs called dibs on the land, right? Similar to how the United States has called dibs on indigenous lands and virtually every other part of the world with an insane amount of military bases. That's what Manifest Destiny is. It's just calling dibs all around the world. Now, this ignites the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, and despite support from various Arabic nations in the region, Israel wins the war in 1949. The country of Jordan gets control of the West Bank, and Egypt gets control of Gaza, while Jerusalem is split in two. Now, there is no official peace agreement signed by either Israel or Palestine, and over 100,000 Palestinians are displaced and become refugees within their own borders. Now, the UN Charter says that the Palestinians have a right to return to their homes, but the first Prime Minister of Israel had something a little different to say about that.
We must expel the Arabs and take their places.
This guy sounds fun at parties, huh? Now, as if that wasn't enough, there were top secret orders after the war to track the movement of Arabs from Gaza, expel them from villages, deny their return, burn down their villages, and then put mines on the roads to prevent Palestinians from coming back. Yeah. Right? Yeah, guys. Yeah. Burning down villages and laying mines down to kill refugees. The pillars of every democracy. Right. Oh, I'm sorry. I mispronounced warmongering psychopathic theocratic dictatorship. I'm sorry. That's my bad, you guys. You'd be surprised how many times we mispronounce that as democracy, you know? Like we keep saying democracy, but what we're really trying to say is warmongering psychopathic theocratic dictatorships. It is a tongue twister, you guys. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. By 1950, the Israelis implement the absentee property law.
Deeming Palestinian refugees absentees, Israel seized hundreds of thousands of acres of their land, even though they were only absent because Israel wouldn't let them return.
Now, their rationale is that the Palestinians didn't call fives on their homes before fleeing. That's how you hold your place in line and also prevent your homes from being stolen. Did fucking nobody in Palestine go to middle school? I mean, come on, you guys. This is placeholding 101, you know? But don't worry, it gets worse. In 1954, Israel passed the Prevention of Infiltration Law.
In 1954, the Prevention of Infiltration Law was created to punish any refugee trying to return, under which a shoot-to-kill policy was employed, like the one still used today against the Great March protesters.
Yes. Calling refugees trying to return to their homes infiltrators is like insane. It's crazy. It's insane. Why would you can't just call refugees infiltrators. Even Charles Manson would be like, yeah, that's kind of fucking crazy. You guys shouldn't do that kind of shit. Yeah, and this law is still in effect to this day. I mean, I suppose we can find this acceptable since they don't really specify where to shoot them. You know, you can like shoot them in the leg, and that's the humane thing to do according to the Democrats. As Joe Biden famously said, you got to shoot them in the leg. And maybe that's what they're doing, you know, because the Israelis care. So they'll just kind of maim you. Now, in 1967, the infamous Six-Day War resulted in Israel controlling Gaza, the West Bank, and the Sinai Peninsula. A little over a decade later, in 1979, Israel gave the Sinai Peninsula back to Egypt under a peace agreement. Israel got to control Gaza and the West Bank, despite Palestinians' call for freedom. And Israel's response to that was, hey, we can't hear you over all the rockets we keep firing into your homes. If you guys could, like, speak up louder than an explosion you'd see in a Stallone movie, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. Now, at the same time, Israel also annexes West Jerusalem, which the international community sees as, let me check the official reports here, a dick move. That's what the international community thinks of that. Between 1987 and 1993, while Will Smith in America was getting jiggy with it, Palestine had its first intifada, or uprising, against Israel. Now, after violence and bloodshed, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO, and the Israeli government were calling for a two-state solution. Well, geez, isn't that kind of what the UN proposed in 1948? I mean, if the UN had actually listened to the Palestinians and maybe given them an equal amount of land as the Israelis, perhaps we wouldn't have gotten here and everybody across the globe could be getting jiggy with Will Smith. And maybe we would have figured out what the fuck getting jiggy with it means. It's not explained in the song. The whole song is, let's get jiggy with it. Na, 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 na. That's it. What does it mean, Will? You got to put more words into it. Now, between 2000 and 2005, the second intifada takes place, which results in Israeli troops leaving the Gaza Strip. But Israel still controls who gets to go in and out of Gaza. This would be like if you had a college friend visit you for a weekend, and then they made a huge mess in your house, and then after an argument, they left in a huff and a puff. Right? And then they hired a bunch of bouncers to punch you in the chest every time you left and came back to your house. Likely never leave your house. Now, in 2006, Hamas gets legally elected as the governing body in Gaza, while their rival party, Fatah, controlled the West Bank alongside the PLO. Now, Fatah went to Israel to ask them to overthrow Hamas.
A diplomatic cable released by WikiLeaks reveals the truth behind Israel's rhetoric about Hamas. After losing the election, rival party Fatah requested that Israel come to their aid with weapons and military strikes to prevent Hamas from taking control of the Strip. As exposed in the cables, the Israeli intelligence chief told the U.S. ambassador that they wanted Hamas to take full control of Gaza, telling him that if Hamas managed to take full control, then the Israeli Defense Forces would be able to regard Gaza as a hostile territory. Fatah fled as a result, and Israel immediately designated every man, woman, and child in Gaza hostile, and therefore everything a legitimate target. With this excuse, that all of Gaza is a hostile entity, they implemented the devastating blockade and began a regular series of bombing campaigns that took death and destruction to a new level.
This mentality is the equivalent of a bully giving you a swirly, which, let's be honest, is basically where waterboarding comes from. And then started screaming that they were being attacked because their shoes got wet. Yeah, and then the rest of the school was like, well, yeah, it is violence because those are Jordans, and that is... it's real expensive, okay? We're a public school. Most of us are middle class. It's like $300 shoes, so...
Yep, they are.
Therefore...
Ridiculous.
Now, in 2014, Israel launched a 5-day siege of Gaza that left 2,000 Palestinians dead. Israeli ground troops started invading Gaza, and they were met with resistance that pushed them back. The IDF responded with heavy artillery and airstrikes that killed over 120 people in one day. As you can see, that is the destruction that Israel causes Gaza. Israel's response to Palestinians defending their homes from an invading and occupying force is disproportionate and always has been. This is like if you played a prank on your friend at a sleepover and they responded by, I don't know, burning your house down. Your friend is going to go to prison for arson, but in the case of Israel, none of that really happens. In this case, America, aka the police of the world, gives them more weapons and aid. In 2018, the peaceful resistance march, known as the Great March of Return, saw Palestinians marching and demonstrating a sit-in on the border of Gaza. They were met with chemical gas attacks and sniper fire that left 180 dead. These were unarmed civilians that Israeli snipers shot in the head or the heart. And they shot kids, disabled folks, the elderly, journalists, and medics. This is not Israel defending itself. It is Israel indiscriminately killing people that they do not value. Now, the march was organized when a young man saw a bird crossing the Gaza-Israel border without any issues. I'm going to read.
It all started with a post. What would happen if thousands of Gazans attempted to peacefully cross the fence that separated them from their ancestral lands?
I looked at the birds flying at the fences without being held by anyone. Birds decide to fly and fly. I have discovered that the real reason for abhorring the occupation, I hate it because it contradicts the laws of nature. It forbids me to be a flying bird. Since then, the Israeli Defense Forces have been sniping at any bird that dares cross into the Promised Land without Israeli authorization. right? The IDF is like, where are your papers, bird? Huh? This is an insurgent bird.
Jesus.
Clip its wings and send it to hell. Was that? We're Jewish and we don't believe in a concept of hell? Well, damn it. Fine, clip its wings and, I don't know, set it on fire or something. We have to defend ourselves from these terrorist birds. And after all that, that brings us to today, right? Earlier in May, Israel attacked a mosque during Ramadan under the pretense that Muslims use high holidays to spread hate and violence, which is not just false and racist as hell, but it's also a double standard, right? If anyone said Hanukkah was about spreading violent Zionist propaganda, you'd be called an anti-Semite and likely canceled, right? I mean, Americans get their panties in a bunch when someone says Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. But sure, yes, obliterating a mosque is just kosher with everyone. Now, after retaliation from Gaza, Israel has continued to fire more rockets into the open-air prison and even blew up the headquarters of news organizations AJ Plus and the AP, along with residential buildings, hospitals, schools, and just for safe measure, one hawk's nest. Guys, look, you never know whether that hawk is going to grow up to be a raptor extremist. You just don't know. It could grow up to believe one that believes in the return of the great velociraptor and will be gifted with 72 virgin hawks. You just don't know. Speak English, hawks. Speak English. Now, even with a new prime minister, Israel's assault of Gaza has not stopped. The rhetoric is the same xenophobic, propagandistic poison that's always been spewed. There are no progressive Israeli prime ministers, just extremely hawkish ones. Because under imperialism, the only good hawk is a war hawk. Now, historically speaking, the Jews and Muslims had a common enemy at one point. The British. Actually, the whole world has had them as a common enemy at one point, right? I mean, instead of fighting back against an imperial force, Israel decided to become an imperial force and then deny that it is one. I mean, Israel has decided to ignore its own history and use propaganda to claim that it's the victim of violence from unarmed civilians. The lies from Israel are falling apart as we speak. And that has been your forkful of noodles for this week. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. But if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you hit the like button. Please make sure you hit the share button and get the word out, because that's how independent media thrives. That's how independent media gets the word out there. Share it with your friends. Share it with your enemy. Share it with somebody that you know needs to hear this kind of stuff, that is woefully uninformed about the happenings around the world. That sharing is a huge way that you can help, and it costs you literally nothing. It costs you literally nothing. But if you're saying, hey, Krish, I really enjoy your stuff and I want to financially contribute to your videos and your podcasts and your comedy, how can I do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. You can go to krishmohanhaha.com/donate. You can become a sustaining member, which gets you free tickets to virtual comedy shows, bonus stand-up comedy content. You get to ask me questions that I will respond to in video form that will become member-exclusive videos. You get a ton of cool stuff by becoming a sustaining member. You can also make a one-time donation as well. You can download my stand-up comedy albums. You can also get merch. You can buy t-shirts or mugs or die-cut stickers, hoodies, that sort of stuff. And all of this stuff is available directly on my website at krishmohanhaha.com. That's krishmohanhaha.com. And if you get the merch, there is a Julian Assange design that I made, and all of the profits I make from that, I'm going to be donating to pro-Assange activists and pro-Assange journalists like Action for Assange, Kevin Gasola, Richard Medhurst, so on and so forth. There's tons of amazing people out there that cover Julian Assange, that talk about what's going on with him, and I want to make sure that they are supported. So by purchasing those shirts, you not only get to spread awareness about Assange, but you also get to help support people that are amplifying his voice, his message, and his story. And last but not least, if you want to be part of these virtual comedy shows that happen every single month on the last Friday of every single month, you can go to my website and grab tickets for the next one right now. Do it right now. Sometimes we have special guests on the show, and it's awesome, and it's super fun. So you do not want to miss these shows, and it's always a good time to be surrounded by like-minded people. We do a little discussion at the end, and it's a really, really fun time. And again, thank you guys for checking out this video. Thank you to everybody that supports this channel, has subscribed to my videos and podcasts, that have contributed financially and have become sustaining members. I really appreciate it. Every little bit helps, and every little bit helps me do this full time. So I very much appreciate you guys. But till the next video, we'll see you soon. Take it easy, guys.